Well, joining me now from Washington, D.C. is retired U.S. Army Brigadier General Mark Kimmitt. In London, we have former Kremlin advisor Alexander Nekrassov. And in the Turkish city of Gaziantep is Murat Aslan. He led the intelligence division within the Turkish Armed Forces and is now a security researcher at think tank the SETA Foundation. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. General Kimmitt, why can't Turkey have both the F-35s and the S-400 system? What's the problem?
Well, it's not a problem. It's an intelligence concern. The fact remains that the radar system for the S-400 is a learning instrument. And the more that the F-35 would be flying under that radar, the more our adversaries that use the S-400 could determine its capabilities. Now, that's not to suggest for a moment that Turkey is an adversary, but I don't think we're confident that what would be delivered to Turkey would not have the ability to have that data sent back to the Russian military.
General Kimmitt, it's more about politics, isn't it? It's less about the technical aspects of defense capability or an intelligence threat. And it's, hey, don't do business with Russia. We're part of the same club. We're NATO. Why are you doing business with the very country that NATO was set up to fight? Isn't that it?
No, I don't think it's that at all. If you take a look at the number of the NATO countries that do have weapons systems that have been made elsewhere. For example, Greece uses the Russian S-300. We have no concerns with that, but the S-400 is incompatible with NATO systems and incompatible with a NATO commitment not only to protect American F-35s, but all the countries in NATO that use F-35s as well.
Murat Aslan, Turkey is jeopardizing NATO's security umbrella by doing this deal, and that's why the Americans have a problem with it. That's why Mike Pence is saying Turkey must choose. What do you think?
Well, actually, I don't see this issue as a technical issue or as a threat to intelligence architecture or protection or force protection of the NATO forces. The initial issue is that every aircraft has an intelligence signature in the air, not by the radars observing it, watching it, but actually by the radiation that it reflects. What I mean is that F-35 is actually radiating by means of receivers or other apparatus that is mounted on it, which means S-400 is also capable of capturing any other signature, not only the aircraft itself. The second issue, we know that S-300 has the same infrastructure with the S-400s in terms of radar and also the other equipment that is attached or embedded, which means Greece, for instance, has S-300 and can easily capture F-35 if S-400 does the same thing. And we know that in the Iniakos exercise in Crete, F-35 of Italians were sent over there and S-300 were run.
Okay.
And we know that if there is a secrecy, that means we should say goodbye.
Okay, I'm going to get General Kimmitt to respond in a moment, but I want to bring in Alexander Nekrassov to talk about the Russian angle because there's a fear, and a lot of commentators have said this, especially US commentators. They feel that Putin has enjoyed this, selling the S-400s to Turkey, because it's allowed him to drive a wedge between Turkey and NATO, and that's ultimately the Russian goal, to create that sense of chaos between Turkey and its NATO allies. Is that what the Russians are doing?
Well, I don't see that as an attempt to drive a wedge between Turkey and NATO, because first of all, it's impossible to do that. Turkey will remain a member of NATO. And a sale of a defensive system, it is a defensive system, we must stress that, like S-400, is not going to change anything. So I think this is more to do about politics. I think the Americans are furious simply because it's that sort of attitude in Washington that NATO is our alliance and nobody can dictate anything to our alliance, only we can do that. Unfortunately, the Americans have a problem. They are selling outdated, not the modern equipment to the allies on many occasions. And this is a case when Turkey probably made the right choice, because the Patriot, the previous models, are not as good as the S-400. So why should Turkey pay money for an old product when it can get a better one? That's a very simple, very pragmatic decision.
Okay.
And the Americans should stop playing these games.
Okay, Mark Kimmitt, it's practical. The Russians have a better missile defense system, no more, no less.
Well, to your commentator in Ankara, technically he's wrong. To your commentator in Russia, politically he's wrong. It's that simple.
Why?
Well, in the case of the politics, it is clear that President Putin has been doing everything in his power to drive a wedge in NATO. He's trying to do it up in the Baltics. He's trying to do it in the area around Ukraine. And he also sees Turkey as an opportunity to take advantage of the disputes that the United States has with Turkey, which we would like to solve in America. And I think the Turkish government would like to solve in Ankara. But the fact remains is when you have this aggravating country, Russia, trying to make things worse between us rather than make things better, that's the politics of what we're seeing here. I hope everybody in Turkey certainly realizes that President Putin and Russia don't give a damn about Turkey except as a tool in their overall geopolitical game that they're playing with the rest of the world.
And why is Murat Aslan wrong technically?
Well, I don't want to get into too many of the security aspects, but the fact remains is he says it has a radiating signature. The fact is it's a stealth aircraft, and let me leave it at that.
Okay, let me go to Murat Aslan and say, well, listen, this seems to be less about the incompatibility of having the F-35s and the S-400s at the same time, and rather maybe just the incompatibility of the United States and Turkey as things stand right now. Whether it comes to the US supporting the YPG, whether it comes to not extraditing Fethullah Gulen and so on. We're just at a point in the relationship where the two are in a toxic relationship and maybe they need to think about breaking up. Is that what we're talking about essentially?
Well, I care intentions and perceptions. In terms of intentions, we know that it's the United States who rejected Turkey to give Patriots at the initial stage of Turkish air defense program. And we still do not know why. And the second issue, Turkey was in deep need of procuring an air defense system for urgent needs because we know the developments in the Middle East and we know the facts about the potential missile threat in the Middle East. The second issue, it's about perception of both sides. We know that the United States has long been perceiving Turkey as different from the other allies because the interests of both sides are conflicting. And for Turkey, Turkey perceives the United States as the one who tolerated FETÖ, who tolerated PYD and PKK, and also remained silent, especially after July 15th, which means there must be a trust, though trust has been eroded after 2016. And before that, Obama administration frequently repelled Turkey from the scene. So that's why Turkey started a self-help system that Turkey should not be dependent on any other country, including the United States, and started national air defense program and also procured alternative ones.
Mark Kimmitt, is this, rather than being the latest trigger, is it just the latest symptom in a relationship that has been breaking down for a few years now?
Well, I agree with both you and your commentator in Ankara. Look, you can't ignore the fact that there have been some aggravating issues between the United States and Turkey. I think both sides are doing their best to try to work them out, but they are, in many ways, nowhere close to being solved, particularly the issue with the PYD inside of Syria. We do know that there are talks going on between the Turkish military and the U.S. military right now on the establishment of a safe zone, and we hope that takes care of some of those issues. With regards to the coup, we've been silent because the United States was not part of the coup. Some would suggest we were. We're not even going to, as we say, dignify that comment with a response. On the issue of Gulen, we are working very carefully with the legal authorities to ensure that his asylum rights are respected the way that any asylum rights of an American citizen inside of Turkey would be protected as well. So look, these are aggravating situations, but this latest issue with the S-400 and the Patriot system and Russia are something that are just aggravating the situation even more. And obviously the United States would like to find a method to ensure we resolve this issue as well.
Alexander Nekrassov, beyond the choice of whether Turkey should go for the S-400s or the Patriots and the technicalities and what's better and what's cheaper and so on, politically, what has Russia got to offer that's better than what the US and NATO have got to offer for Turkey?
Well, first of all, NATO and America especially are currently the biggest danger in the world. Let's not forget, by the way, that 2 world wars have been started by the West, or in the West, we would put it this way. So the West is always a danger. And the way the West conducts business now, be it the Middle East, Europe, or any other part of the world, this is very dangerous. The Trump administration's foreign policy, nobody knows what it is. They change their minds all the time. How can Turkey depend on an administration in Washington that is battling with each other, that is fighting, a political war with its opposition in Congress and so on? This is very unstable time. Russia at least is stable. That is very important, I think, for Turkey to understand that they're dealing with a stable leadership. And all this nonsense that Russia poses a threat to Europe, the world, comes from, it's like Hitler-esque propaganda. That has to stop. This lying has to stop. Our colleague from Washington, he needs to understand, propaganda is not an opinion. If you say Russia poses a danger to us, that is not your comment. That is part of the Western propaganda, and the West is the enemy of the world at the moment. All this liberal, democracy and so on, it doesn't work anymore.
General Kimmitt,
the liberal economics is dead.
Okay.
So you're in agony and you are posing a danger to the world.
General Kimmitt, are you just spreading Western propaganda here?
Well, actually, I'm enjoying this conversation tremendously. When Russia puts its troops into Syria to back up a butcher like Bashar al-Assad, well, now Russia puts its troops into Venezuela as the people are starving there, and their whole intent is to prop up a regime that is starving its own people. I would suggest that Russia, which is a small country with a declining population, which has the gross domestic product of Italy, I think it's lashing out in places such as Ukraine and the Baltics and elsewhere. It's just really sort of an issue of a dying country. To suggest that Turkey ought to get behind Russia because it promotes stability, I think getting behind Russia is like jumping on a sinking ship and going down with it.
Okay. Well, we've got both your opinions on the two nations. Let me sort of bring this all the way back to the beginning and ask Murat Aslan, as we look at what the US has said now, Turkey is deeply involved in the production also of the F-35, so it's not so easy to just kick them out of the loop here, right? Turkey prepares parts, it's involved financially and so on as part of the alliance. What should the next step be for President Erdogan? What does he do now that the Trump administration has played its card?
What is expected should be, compromise among all actors. Now, Turkey decided S-400 procurement and also continues to support F-35. And I do not see any reasoning to change that path, because S-400 and F-35 are completely different issues, and Turkey can have the capacity to have incompatibility of all systems, in the inventory of Turkish Armed Forces, and I do not see any reasoning to have 35 be cancelled. But we know that Turkey have alternatives, and Turkey easily can procure another fighter jet that is equivalent to F-35. It will take a bit time, but sure, we will realize it. That means I do not see a reason for not compromising, but we have a road if anything occurs negatively.
General Kimmitt, will there be compromise?
Well, I hope so, but I am concerned that the article I read this morning in the New York Times, where senators from both sides of the aisle are now saying that if Turkey goes through the purchase of the S-400, with the purchase of the S-400, they will invoke CATSA, the Sanctions Act that has sanctioned Russia and anyone that deals with Russia. So what I'd hate to see is Turkey continuing to buy the S-400s and see sanctions imposed on it. So you really have a double whammy for Turkey, which I would like to see avoided and compromised. Number one, purchasing a system that puts their F-35s and all of NATO F-35s at risk. And number two, by purchasing from Russia, we would have to invoke the CATSA Act and potentially sanction Turkey with the inevitable results of a sanction regime on Turkey, which would follow.
Alexander Nekrassov, if the U.S. does sanction Turkey, what does that mean for Russia?
I don't think the US will sanction Turkey simply because Turkey is too important. All this posturing, all this blackmail is typical American position. So I think Turkey should just continue as it is doing. Nothing will change. Americans will back down. Americans are weakened now, and this must be understood. And as for all this equipment, you must understand one thing. The Third World War will be a nuclear war. That's why Americans are so nervous. They're trying to invent this and that system and so on. The Russians have the most powerful now nuclear arsenal. It's modernized, it's ready for war. So Americans need to understand that. All their bases, all their flying machines, all their Patriot systems will not be saved in a nuclear conflict, and America will be destroyed as well. So they better deal with Russia on a friendly basis. They better remember that.
Okay, on that depressing note, I've got to wrap. Mark Kimmitt, Alexander Nekrassov, and Murat Aslan. Listen, thanks for joining us once again.